Thanks for listening to another episode of PSL on the Mic, the City of Port St. Lucie's official podcast. So we're still in the month of May, and I promised you 2 weeks ago that the entire month was going to be dedicated to all things hurricane. We had our EM director in 2 weeks ago, and today we're lucky to have Lewis Johnson and John Dunton, but I'm going to call you JD. Is that cool?
I've been called worse.
Everyone calls you JD, so that's how I'm using it. But they're from Public Works. We're going to talk about what Public Works does to prepare the city for an impending storm. Hopefully, we won't have to do that this year, but we're always preparing the whole year, and then especially leading up to the storm. So before we start, thank you for coming in, and tell us a little bit about yourselves first. And then we'll jump into all our questions.
Okay, hello. Again, I'm Lewis Johnson, Assistant Public Works Director for the City of Port St. Lucie. I've been in this business for over 39 years.
Wow.
And it's been a great tour for me. And I do a lot of tournament bass fishing. I do a lot of outside sports to try to stay in shape the best I can. But and I do a lot of reading.
Awesome. Good for you. Well, we're happy to have you here.
Thank you.
JD, your turn.
John Dunton, City of Port St. Lucie Public Works. I, like him, paralleled. I have a 39-year career with Public Works. I've been with the City of Port St. Lucie since I was 18. So
I know. You grew up here, right?
Yeah, I remember coming in here and doing TV shows and stuff back in the day. That was cool. So, like him, I like being anything outdoors. I like exercise. I like work, training. I like fishing. I like being at the beach. So anything outdoors, anything that keeps me moving, I'm all in.
Awesome.
Not afraid.
That's why you're in Public Works.
Right on.
So you can be outdoors all the time. So hurricanes, there's probably, there's one good thing about hurricanes, right? I mean, that's probably the only good thing is they allow us to prepare, unlike other, natural disasters, earthquakes, tornadoes, and the like. So say we're a week out from a hurricane. Meteorologists are preparing us, and they said, we're going to get some sort of impact or we're going to get a direct hit. I want you guys to take us from maybe a week out, even or before that, if you guys start before that. What happens? I know the traffic lights come down and stuff like that, but let's start from a week out. What would happen?
Well, one of the things is we have a very specific standard operating procedure that we have with the Public Works Department. We were in charge of emergency management for some time, so we were able to really refine our plans. So that day looking out certainly has to do with a lot of the meteorology readings, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And based upon the trajectory of where the storm looks like is how our preparation protocol works out. Okay. It could be as easy as looking at canals, looking at grates, looking at some of our primary structures, maybe making a phone call to some of our other partners in anticipation of that storm. So everything goes from 5 to 4 to 3. And that's also...
You base on the category of the storm?
No, it's really the protocol. So if we know that there's anything impending, anytime we get an opportunity from our standpoint and anything looks remotely close, I want to go through that plan. So iron sharpens iron. And so anytime you don't get a chance to get repetitions on things that may not occur. So anything that comes about, I want us to go through and exercise those plans. So if indeed that does happen, we and our staff are the most prepared to be able to respond if something becomes imminent. And that also certainly changes if we get a declaration from the city manager's office.
Right.
That kind of changes our protocol pretty rapidly, so we want to make sure we have all the resources in play to respond.
And that's what we talked about a couple weeks ago with Billy, was when we activate, what does that mean exactly? And it's based off our city manager declaring a local state of emergency for the city. Lewis, explain some of the things that you guys might do, with lakes or canals and stuff like that.
Okay, one of the things we want to establish is the communication aspect of it. Communication is key. And we want to make sure that all of our internal personnel, all their information has been updated, because we want to make sure that we're able to get in contact with them depending upon the situation. As we want to make sure we contact all of our
contractors
to make sure all their project sites that we have in the city.
I didn't even think about that, people, road work and stuff. Okay.
Absolutely, to make sure any flying debris or anything of that nature is all battened down and taken care of, or actually removed before the hurricane, the storm actually approaches. When it comes to water levels and things like that, I like to defer to JD on that because he is our expert in that.
Well, it brings up a good question. So in South Florida and our waterways are regulated by the South Florida Water Management District.
They are, yeah.
And there's two seasonal operating protocols that we can adhere our water levels by, wintertime and summertime. So essentially, depending on the water body, it may allow us a fluctuation up to 3 feet. So we know, well, we have the ability to make those fluctuations. Knowing that water quality is important, we also take those things in consideration. So we really don't necessarily dump water just to dump water, but in the event that we have an impeding event coming to us, we, giving 72 hours gives us a lot of opportunity. So to get our system down, you give us 72 hours, not a big interference with tidal influence, and we can draw down it to an opportunity that we can expect, if it's a 4, a 6, an 8, or up to a 12-inch event.
Oh, wow, okay.
To manage our stormwater. It's a big deal. It's a big stormwater system. So timing is certainly important. Knowing in the summertime gives us a little bit more flexibility due to our permit.
And how many, I should have asked this earlier, how many people work in public works? Like that you guys would have, like, say, everyone ready for if there's a storm?
Well, pretty much everyone is essential.
Yeah.
In a sense, that number, I can get you that number, exactly how many people are working there. It's almost like all hands on deck.
Yeah, the same with our department, yeah. What about like swales? Is there anything that residents can do like to prepare like during the year to make sure that that water keeps flowing?
Well, we have, you see we have a lot of the swell liner in the ground, that plastic liner. And so that works out very well because it's able to allow that conveyance to systematically go from A to Z as long as everything is cleaned. The city, our department provides up to 6 supplemental cleanings of that swale liner. So as it relates to having any adversarial conditions prior to that, the swale would be the least of our concerns.
Yeah, okay.
It's the waterways, it's the larger areas.
Right.
So if the water can't get to the primary areas where they're discharged, which ultimately leads into the river, well, nothing's going to work. So our focus is on the canals, then working our way backwards to the swales.
Yeah, but we can also, residents throughout the whole year too, just make sure that that's clear because flooding can occur, I guess, even in neighborhoods and stuff like that, right?
Yes, it can. And also,
As long as there's no obstructions and stuff.
just to add to what JD was saying, we have a very robust program itself is for S maintenance, and we do that throughout the year, replacing liner, replacing in the type of swales, in the type of
Culverts.
things
right?
like that. Yes.
As far as like traffic lights, that's always like the last thing that you guys take care of, isn't it? Like depending on the wind, right?
Well, there's
They come down?
Depending what they are, you'll see with everything that we install now are called mast arms. They're the ones you'll see the big piece of metal go up this way and that way.
Yep.
Well, those are designed
To withstand winds.
Yeah,
Oh,
for
good.
withstand winds.
Okay.
But we also have a lot of them that are on span wires. And those are the ones you'll see that come down last. And what we'll do is traffic, Paul Johnson and his group, what they'll do is knowing that we have an imminent storm coming, there's a state of emergency, we'll take out one of the 2 signs, the lights at the intersection. We'll leave one up from a safety thing.
Sure.
But they're expensive. So, in trying to mitigate risk and costs associated with it, if we had to repair those, we cut that generally in 50% of what their capabilities are in the intersection.
Now, are there any departments that you guys work the most with when you're preparing the city for a storm?
All hands on deck. So it's
All departments?
It's a little bit of everything. Well, that's one of the things that we have a really robust emergency management. So a lot of the things that were traditionally a heavy lift for our department has now been displaced over to emergency management. Very good program. They have it. They are the guiding principles on those protocols, what they look like, the interaction with the public, the interaction between the departments, and A to Z, very specifically on what is the expectation to make sure that no stone is unturned. So we have to credit them for that, and we do as they seek there, and we're there just before, but certainly after where we really come into play.
Yeah, they know their stuff over there. What about like residents cutting trees and stuff? There's always an inclination to like, oh my gosh, there's a hurricane, I got to cut my trees down. But we don't want people to do that.
We don't advise that.
No. Because for obvious reasons, garbage might not be picked up too, and at least the foliage and stuff like that. So
That is true.
One of the things that we spoke about briefly was what is the thing that we don't want to see? The one thing we don't want to see is there's a storm coming and everybody's putting everything out to the curbside. Well, those are all projectiles. And those things have an adversarial effect universally to all the residents. So now is the time of year that you do your pruning and get them done now in preparation of hurricane season. So now is the time, not then.
That reminds me, I have to get mine done. Okay. So the storm is here. What do you guys do during the storm? What does Public Works do during the storm? You're not out in the storm, obviously, but is everybody, at the EOC, at home, like waiting to see what they have to do?
Well, a lot of it depends on the storm itself. And some of us may be at home on call, waiting on that call to come in. Some of us are staying overnight, depends on when the storm hits. And some of us are in the EOC. So we're in different areas throughout the city, but we're all accessible when we get the all go.
Right.
When the winds die down below 35 miles per hour, then we have an opportunity to start moving forward with the process.
And start assessing the damage.
Well,
and
that's
stuff.
the operative word. He said the operative thing. So when a storm is coming, we are not allowed to be out on the roadways until it becomes below a tropical storm. So you're not going to see people out running around. It's really a bit futile and it's unsafe. So
Right, of
once
course.
it's below that, it's all hands on deck.
Yeah, last year when Milton came through, we were all locked in City Hall. We couldn't, everybody come in before this time. Doors are locked. So obviously we've grown in the past even 5 years. But how has preparation, both of you guys have been here for a while, how has preparations changed, say, from like 20 years ago? Is it the same sort of protocol? Is there more involved now because there's more residents and there's, more buildings, more roads?
I would think what has changed over the last 20 years is communication, which is always key.
Yeah.
And being able to go through your programs, having your hurricane management plan always updated and up to par. And I think over the last 20 years, I think those aspects of hurricane preparedness has really helped us out tremendously.
In line with the communications technology, right? So it's the technology, the technological with the meteorologists and how they're able to really provide us the best communications, and the information has certainly made things, instead of looking out and seeing it, it's starting to get gray out.
like this, yeah.
Just the way they've been able to really project and forecast things. It's certainly, it's not perfect, right? But
No.
it's much more robust than it was before.
It's so much, and they even changed the cone a couple years ago. They changed it so it's a little bit narrower, not so wide. And we ask people to listen to your local meteorologists. They know what's going on here. That's probably the most important thing.
I think another thing that's changed is the amount of hurricanes now, how it spins off, the spin-off of the tornadoes. I think in the last 20 years that's changed tremendously.
Yeah, and last year was a good example of that. That was awful. Is there anything, we're going to have you guys come back for the next episode to talk about what Public Works does after a storm, recovery, cleanup, and stuff like that. But is there anything else that you guys want to add that we might have missed out on for preparation's sake?
As far as preparation, we definitely had to pay close attention to what level the EOC is activated. So that really gives us a lot of information exactly how we need to proceed in the aspect of how we're doing things.
And one more thing, too. Do you guys work with the county at all, for preparation beforehand?
Absolutely. Well, if you think about it, when it comes to them, the county traditionally and currently are the lead agency within the county itself to provide direction. So there's a high level of communications. Certainly, if there's roads that go through within the city limits.
City,
we have a very, very good partnership. We don't have a lot of those roadways in there, but there was certainly a fluent communication where we meet quarterly and we talk about these things to assure that we're working in partnership with each other to the best of everybody's ability.
Yeah, that's the
with all
best
of our
thing.
citizens,
Like Louis said, communication. That's
Right
the key part of it. Well, we're going to have you guys back in a couple weeks, so I thank you for coming in for this episode.
It's our pleasure.
Thanks.